I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today, I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Trimming, no other than Mr. Matthew Basile. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Can you please introduce yourself more?
Sure, yeah. I'm Matthew A. Basile. I'm a writer, storyteller. I've done many different mediums. I've done comic books. I've done audio dramas. I've written plays. I'm shopping around actually a one-act play right now. But this is my first novel that I've ever written, which is called Dreaming, which is available for pre-order right now on Amazon, and it's supposed to be available for pre-order on Barnes and Noble as well. But we seem to be having some technical difficulties, and I'm still waiting to hear back about that. But it is definitely available on Amazon.
Congratulations, Mr. Matthew, for your debut novel. So how is it?
How is it? Well,
Yes.
how does it feel, you mean?
Yes.
It feels a little nerve-wracking, actually, to be honest with you, Daniel. It's
Yes.
like I said, I've written other stuff that's been out there. I've self-published, like I said, a comic book and novella before. I have an audio drama series that's right now out on the web. You can listen to it. It's called Emotional. I even did my own podcast on anime for a period of time. It's currently on hiatus, so I'm doing publicity for the book and getting this out. But this feels the book to me was very personal. It's probably the deepest I've delved into myself, and so it kind of puts me out there in a way that I haven't quite been yet. So it's actually a little nerve-wracking for me to put myself out there and to actually call myself a published author. And it just seems all very big, and I'm just kind of not, you feel like the ground's a little bit unsteady under your feet right now. I don't know if other authors have felt that way, but that's how I feel.
So do you consider Dreaming is your first son, right?
Yeah, all my works are like children to me. Every single work, idea that I come out is kind of like a child. Some of them unfortunately never have yet to make it out into the world, but I would say that this one is closer to me, if that makes sense, because it has a lot of me in it. It has a lot of things that are very important to me kind of woven into the story. And so in that sense, it does feel a little closer. And it's the one that's, got published, so it's the one that's out there, and it's the one that made me a published writer. My dad wanted to be a writer. He's no longer with us, but my dad wanted to be a writer when he was younger, and he went through the rejection period, and he eventually gave it up. So in that way, it just that alone kind of makes me feel like this one carries a little bit more weight on its shoulders, I guess is a good way to put it, than the other stories I've done in the past.
It's just like you fulfilled the dream of your father.
Yeah, I did. And I fulfilled my own dream of becoming a published writer as well in doing so. And it because so much of myself was put into this, and I worked on this so long and worked on it so hard that, like I said, it just feels like it's weightier than the others. I would love to get every story idea I have out there, but this one feels like has an importance to it.
So if you describe your writing in one word, what is it?
Visual, I guess, in a way. I've been told I'm a visual writer. I do come from a filmmaking background. I went to film school. That was my original first, love, I guess, was movies, and therefore it's where I kind of gravitated towards originally with my writing. I, wanted to see them up on the big screen when I was, in middle school and high school, especially, and in college, obviously, when I was actually in film school. So I think some of that still carries through, and because of that, sometimes I've gotten criticism that maybe I could be a little bit more descriptive or use a little bit more, flourishes as far as describing the people and the characters and all that. But I have also been told that it's a unique style because it moves very, very quickly. It has a cinematic feel to it. So maybe cinematic is a better term to describe it. It feels very cinematic, and the story is always, when I write these stories, especially literary stories, they move very, very quickly, and you'll see that in Dreaming. It's a scene and then a scene, and it's very, very fast paced. Especially in Dreaming, probably is one of my more fast paced ones, because there's just so much going on. There's so many characters, and I did that purposely because I wanted it's how I see the world. That's why I said it kind of has so much me in there. I see the world in patterns. I see the world as connections of different things. And apparently it's different than a lot of other people, because I've tried explaining things to other people and they sometimes get lost when I talk. But but I wrote it that way. So, for better or worse, I guess. But I wrote the story purposely to kind of how I see things. So there's a lot of moving parts, and they all kind of, when the story's finished, you'll see how they kind of, one pushed on something and then that kind of caused something else to happen. And then another thing that was seemingly unrelated ended up coming into play. And that caused this all thing to, spiral into a different direction. And that's kind of how I wrote it. So it has that very cinematic style of, constantly moving and changing gears and everything like that, rather than it's, a straightforward, where the character is just, kind of moving along through their day to day life. It's not an everyday day to day life story. It's all stuff happening. It's about a solar system, not ours, a different solar system, and this whole solar system really just gets more and more chaotic as the story progresses.
Yes. So, what genre of writing you like?
I do sci-fi fantasy. It's just this Dreaming's definitely sci-fi. It's probably one of the more sci-fi ones I've done story-wise, but it
Yes.
does still have some fantastical elements. But in it as well, it has some magic and some kind of metaphysical overtones to it. But
Yes.
it sci-fi fantasy just to me feels like I can express myself the easiest in. And by that I mean I've done stories with like just vampires, so I guess that would fall under technically urban horror. But I mean anything with kind of otherworldly elements, I feel it allows me to express what I'm trying to express easier. I think it allows me to have more fun with the story when I'm writing it, because I don't have to be locked in to, okay, what's going on in the world right now, what's what's real, okay, this isn't, yeah, I can bend things, and by bending those things, I feel like I can reflect better, the world that we do live in, and what I'm trying to kind of shine a light on or point out in our world, because I personally consider myself an artist. I'm sure most writers
Yes.
do. And I'm a firm believer that an artist's job, I don't know if I said that right, the job of an artist is probably a better way to say that. The job of
Yes.
an artist is to make people look at the world a little bit differently, even if it's just for that second while they're gazing at a painting or reading your story or watching the movie or looking at a sculpture, whatever your medium is. If it's just even for that few seconds, just for them to shift that perspective for a moment and look at something differently, or notice something that maybe they never thought of before. I think that's what an artist's job is. And that's the duty of an artist, because that helps us as a collective, move forward and start thinking outside of the norms in our regimented, day-to-day life, and start thinking outside the box and come up with new solutions and new ways and ideas of how to live life. So I think that's what I'm trying to do with my stories, at least. And like I said, I think I can do that. I feel most comfortable at least doing that in the sci-fi fantasy realm, where I can, like I said, bend things a little bit more easily.
Very well said, Mr. Matthew. What is behind the title of your book, Dreaming?
Well, that a good question. um, because Dreaming is in the story. Like I said, it takes place in another solar system, so not ours. So I built this world from scratch up. I used a lot of things that I've seen in our world. Obviously, I put some of those elements in there, but this is a world that I created from scratch. Right? So it's not like a futuristic, like humans migrated to a different solar system, so we still have our history and culture. No, this is a completely different history, completely different people. These are humanoids that have nothing to do with us, or in on Earth. But so in this world, dreaming isn't done while they sleep. Dreaming is done when they experience sexual bliss or sexual ecstasy. So, it's not a dreaming like when we go to sleep and we have kind of, okay, we have a crazy dream and we're like, all right, I don't know what I watched or ate right before I went to bed.
Yes.
They look at it differently. They look at it more like a lot of indigenous cultures looked at dreaming, because I'm a big, I like history and I like exploring other cultures, especially ancient ones. And a lot of indigenous people looked at dreaming as messages from beyond, like the spirit world, or their creator, whatever their belief system was. They looked at dreaming as a way for us to kind of understand ourselves better and understand the world. So it was kind of more like messages being delivered
Yes.
to them, or a self exploration. I mean, some tribes, they would wake up in the middle of the night and they would all tell each other. They would sit around a circle and they would all tell each other their dreams, and then they would go back to bed for another 4 or 5 hours. So because they put that much importance in what they were dreaming. And so they're more like that in this culture. So when they dream, not only do they do it while they're having sex, but they do see it as an experience that looks within and can give them a glimpse of something that's beyond what they would normally see in their mundane lives. And the the basic catalyst of this story is that a mercenary named Deleth, who's, I guess, would be called the main character. He is a mercenary and he is sent after this person, and he doesn't give it any information. It's very clandestine, but he's a mercenary, so he just takes the job because whatever, they're promising him a lot of money, basically. And when he finds this person, she can dream differently. She dreams more intense. She seems to, and what that is and what they actually means by her dreaming differently is kind of something that's discovered throughout the book. So I don't want to spoil that in case any of your listeners themselves. So I'll keep it spoiler free, but that's kind of the catalyst. And so when they find her, like, everybody's like, wait, it's like, okay, she dreams differently, and they all kind of don't know what to do with that and what that means, and why she can do that. And so that's why the book is called Dreaming, because that's like, it's about the dreaming differently than what that's kind of sets in motion for the whole cast of characters and the solar system in general in the story.
So how do you structure your book, Dreaming?
Well, I structured it. I did an outline, which I usually do not do in my writing. I think this was the first time I ever did an outline when I did it, because the whole thing was that it just kind of came to me at a point when I was very down on my writing. I didn't know what to do. The projects that I had been working on, I thought were going to go in one direction or gain some traction. They seemed to be stalled. And I honestly just, it was a rainy 4th of July weekend. I didn't have anything to do. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just, I just kind of binged watch movies and TV. And I guess some of those, and just kind of shut off my brain for, 3 or 4 days. And I guess some of those, I don't know, elements clanged in my head, and they brought together a lot of different projects that I was trying to work on, about 3 or 4 that I was at the, because it was during the COVID lockdown, or pretty close to it, like maybe towards the tail end of it. And it was like I was kind of going through, all these story ideas. I was like I was, I was about 5 seconds away from just starting to scribble on the walls over here, with all my story ideas. So, and I had a lot, like I said, that I was working on, but they all kind of stalled. I was really excited about, and there were a few that I kind of had, and I thought they could really be something, but I was like, they're just kind of missing something, or I was like, they just don't feel like right to me. Like, I know when a story feels right to me, like I have the elements, but it's missing like something, or there's just a linchpin that needs to connect them. And I had a couple like that, and I guess from, like I said, the elements I had while I was watching TV, they became kind of the glue that started pulling these other stories together, and they all started coming together, and it's just this world started coming into my head, and I was like, all right, I don't know what to do with this. This is a complex world. I didn't know what to do, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's been very supportive of my writing over the last few years, and he said, well, why don't you just try writing as a novel? Because I said, oh, it's very complicated. It's like Dune, I told him, because he was a fan of Dune. And he's like, well, why don't you write it a novel like Dune? I was like, well, I guess I could try. I was like, I mean, I did a novella once. I was like, so I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need to keep it straight. So I did an outline. And again, I think I used kind of my cinematic background to kind of cheat and do the outline, because I just went through and I said, all right, well, let's introduce the main character. Let's introduce this one of the main relationships that's there. Okay, let's then move on and try to give some background to this world, and what the kind of larger stage is that these other characters are going to be playing at. And I kind of went through, almost like you would see a lot of TV series like on Netflix and Hulu and stuff like they do these days, where they just kind of, I'm a huge fan of like Sopranos. Sopranos is another one that I know that was
Yeah.
a little older, but I'm a huge fan of Sopranos. I thought they did a wonderful job with it. So it's a little heavier than what I tend to do these days. So I don't know if I would rewatch it, but when I watched it when it first aired, and I thought they did a really good job, and I love the fact they kept the narrative moving by going back and forth to the different characters, and
Yes.
each character's story was moved along, and they kind of it built to something, and it built to something huge. Mario Puzo, if you ever read any of his novels, I'm a huge fan. I've read all of his novels.
Wow.
And some I like better than others, but ones that I really liked, such as The Godfather, he did that as well. I thought he moved here to this character. He gave you a lot of background of this character. He moved to this character, and he kept moving from the different scenes, and he moved the story along. So that was just kind of how I did it with the outline. I just said, okay, here's this character. Okay, we haven't seen this character in a little bit, so let's check back in with him. Okay, let's go to these guys, because we haven't seen what's going on with these guys yet. Okay, let's go back and check in. And I just kind of moved that along, because I knew from the get-go, before I started the outline, I knew where they were going to end up. So it was just
Yes.
basically moving each of these, like on a chessboard. It was just moving all the pieces to get to that end game that I knew I wanted to get to at the which is the last, like, probably chapter or two of the book.
So, what are the top five objectives of the main character of Dreaming?
Oh, top five objectives. Well, money. He's he's trying to get money. I think we can all relate to that.
Of course.
Hence why I'm here promoting my book, right?
Oh,
but
yes.
but so he's trying to get money. He's also, which I think is very, very important for readers to understand, because I don't think anything that happens in the book will make sense if you don't get the fact. And hopefully I explained it. I was trying to make it very clear in the first couple chapters. Is he's trying to he doesn't feel like he fits in the solar system. He just has felt rejected all his life, and like he just wasn't a member of the society. And so he's trying to find an escape, basically. And he just doesn't feel like he's going to fit in. So he's just looking for a way to hide out. And
Yeah.
money is kind of what he thinks is going to allow him to do that. I think on a and I think he's aware of that. I think he's definitely aware that he wants money. I think to some degree, he is definitely aware that he's looking for an escape. I think he's conscious of that, even if he might not know all the intricacies of that. I think subconsciously, meaning I don't think he realizes he's doing it. He is looking to feel something. Basically, he's looking to feel something. He says at one point in the book to another character, it's one character basically talks to him about, like, basically torturing or being like violent to other characters. And he says it's the only way I feel something. So subconsciously, I think he's looking to feel something. He wants to feel something in another way outside of that. And so he's looking to feel something. And also, I don't think he's aware of this. He's looking for connection as well. I think he doesn't know that. In the first chapter, again, if you hopefully I explained it, but I mean that's kind of what the conversation is about between the two characters in the first chapter. Is largely about that and his resistance to connection. But I think a lot of times people resist connection when they really want it and they're just afraid of being hurt. So I think that's kind of he ignores it and he says he's being alone and nobody likes him in the he's a loner in the solar system. But I think he wants connection deep down. So money is definitely a conscious objective. I think trying to find a way out of just the society that he's in is a conscious objective. I think subconsciously he wants to find a connection and he wants to find some way to feel something. And I think the fifth objective of him, I guess, would obviously I I think he wants to I think he wants some kind of meaning in his life too. And again, that's maybe not fully realized by him, but again, I think that's what he is. And that's why I said it was a lot of me in there, and it's maybe
Mhm.
divulging a lot about me in this, but I think those are things that, like I said, I felt a lot of people are looking for, but even if they don't really realize it. And this character is there. He just is so armored, figuratively speaking, at least, that he just doesn't realize that. But he's looking for the connection. He's looking to feel something, and he's looking to have some kind of meaning or purpose in his life, because he's really been cast as a villain. Most people are afraid of him, or even to the point of hating him, because he has this past with this very with this group of people that is no longer in existence because he murdered them all. But he was a member of this. Yeah, that's the guy here. Yeah, that's the kind of guy we're dealing with, and that's not a spoiler. I mean, that's like revealed in like the third chapter or some fourth chapter or something like that. But or maybe actually probably even earlier. I'm sorry, it's probably revealed in the first like 20 pages of the book.
Oh,
But he murdered them, and but they they were a very they were painted as villains. They were supposed to be very violent, and they were supposed to be against a lot of the things that society stood for. So even though he murdered them and he says, I renounce their teachings and everything like that, he's still kind of cast in that shadow of them. So he's not really he's even less accepted than he was. And so I think he just kind of feels like he's tried. And this again isn't explicitly said, but hopefully people connect the dots. I mean, he tried. He wanted to he got involved with the group because he was trying to find some kind of purpose in his life, and it kind of didn't work out. And that's and so that's why I think he kind of gave up on it. But I think that's something that's very hard to actually give up on. So that's why I think he kind of looks for those things in the story, and those things are what is moving him through the story. If you understand that those are the things he's looking for, I hope that if you understand those things that he's looking for, it kind of explains his movements and his decisions throughout the story.
well, interesting. Who inspired you in writing the book?
Who inspired me to write Dreaming?
Yes,
Well, Dreaming, yes. Who inspired
dreaming.
me to write Dreaming? I it was a little bit of everybody. Like I said, it was just something that kind of came together when I was, at a low point and didn't know. I will, and these people are credited in my acknowledgments in the book, but there was my one friend, obviously, who suggested, I write the book, who's been very encouraging of my writing. He didn't know a lot about it, but he was the one who kind of pulled the string on the light bulb to actually turn it into a novel. There's another friend of mine. His name is Perry, and there's another friend of mine, Coriel. She definitely opened my doors for me, as far as opened my world to a lot of the um, a lot of the elements that are in dreaming, the metaphysical elements, and she helped me also to feel more empowered which probably helped encourage me to, go really back into writing, because I'd kind of given it up for a little bit of time a few years ago. And I will also have to say that my dogs Molly and Buddy, who are both no longer living, they both since passed away, but they were huge in just opening up my world to a lot of things. I was not a fan of the natural world before them, and I am now a huge fan of nature. Am very into nature, and a lot of the themes and lessons I've learned from nature are in this book. There's also, for the I won't spoil it, for the listeners who want the book, but there is, a section of the book where there's actually two characters in there that have a strong relationship with animals. So that was my way, kind of just giving a nod to my two dogs, Molly and Buddy, who were really instrumental in kind of showing me things that maybe I didn't see before, and giving me that kind of knowledge that helped me kind of make headway and make this book. So I would say those are probably the ones that had direct influence in the inspiration of it. I had a writing group that did beta reading for me. They were very, very helpful in giving me feedback, and I actually will credit them. I one of them at least, that there was a point early on where they were giving me feedback where I said, well, should I do dreaming the way I want to do it, as it's sex, or should I just make it some kind of like weird ritual and allude to the fact? And I said, because I know this book's already kind of outside the box and everything. And she said, look, your writing's not inside the box. You're an outside the box writer. Just write who you are. And that was a big thing for me that really kind of propelled me to just not hold back in this book. And that's why I said I think this one at the beginning of this interview, I think this one carries a little more weight for me, because I didn't pull any punches. I didn't hold back in this one. And lastly, I would have to also say Jared Boll. He was a writer that I interviewed him for a nonprofit organization, a nonprofit media mental health awareness organization called Victims and Villains. Like I said, I did that podcast for them, that podcast series, Emotional. And because I was doing that, and I was doing another podcast for them on anime at the time, and the guy who ran it, Josh, who's been very supportive of my writing, he knew I was a writer, and he had an opportunity to do an interview with an author, and that was Jared. And he asked me if I wanted to do the interview. So I did the interview with Jared, and we hit it off really well. And we actually kind of became friends, and he was been a huge supporter. He was the one who actually brought me to the publisher who ended up publishing it, because I went to him one day, and I said, I was talking to him, and I said, I don't know what to do with this. I'm looking at some publishers. I see some that could maybe, take it. They're not accepting queries right now. Hopefully they'll open up soon. I said, but my book's very outside the box. I don't know if, it limits how many publishers I can really look at. And he said, well, I'm publishing with this company. They're really open to things. Why don't you, I know they're open to submissions. They're looking for work right now. He's like, why don't you try giving it a shot? And, they ended up picking it up, and hence, the book was published. So I definitely have to give props to him too. So I think that covers pretty much everybody that I put in the acknowledgments. Oh, except for, of course, of course, I have a couple friends. Like I have George Zio, and my brother and sister-in-law have been very supportive of my writing as well. But those people are probably the ones that kind of either helped bring me to stuff that I utilized in this book, and kind of gave me the courage to do this book, or helped me physically get this book out to the world. So I do have to kind of single them out too. But yeah, I had a handful of people that helped me. So I like I said, I mentioned all of them in the acknowledgments. If I forgot somebody in the acknowledgments, my apologies, but they are all in the acknowledgement of the book.
Yes. How many months or days you wrote this book, Rennie?
Well, I started writing it in August of 2021. I handed in the final manuscript to the publisher in October of 2022. So so basically however many months that is, I guess. You can do the math. I'm not good at math, hence why I'm a writer, not a mathematician. But yeah, so that was basically the length of that from there. Now I did take about a month beforehand because like I said, it was July 4th weekend when I was just depressed and binge watching TV shows and movies in my bed. But so I did take the month of July of 2021 to just basically work on the outline, work on the world building. I have graphs still on my computer, of the different planets and the different, cultures that are on each one, and the characters and their background and the history of the entire solar system. So, which, like I said, I've never done before. Usually when I write, and I've been told that I write very complex worlds and have a lot of creativity. But any other time I've done it, I've just kind of done on the fly. I just write, and I kind of, as I'm writing, things come to me, and I'll just come back and I'll kind of re-engineer those earlier parts, or and I just, it just kind of comes to me as I'm writing, and I'll do another pass and I'll add that stuff. This one, it was, there was still, as I was writing, stuff was still being added a little bit. There was definitely some changes and some things that I was like, oh, you know what, let's put that there. But the major stuff in the story was all worked on the month before I started writing. It was all set, and it's pretty much stayed unchanged, aside from like I said, little tweaks here and there. Like, okay, like there's a drug, like that they use in the world, in the story, to kind of, it's like their drug, but it kind of stimulates death and stuff, and it heightens their senses, basically. And that was, I think, added later on. But as I was writing it, because I was like, you know what, let's do, that idea came to my head. I was like, yeah, okay, that could fit. I could see where that could become useful if I decide to do other books in this world. And so I kind of added that stuff in. But you'll see that if you read the book, like I said, that's, I think, mentioned about 3 or 4 times at most. And it's not a huge part, but like the major characters, the major settings, the major plot threads were all there before I started writing, which, like I said, is very unusual for me. Usually I know where I'm starting, I know where I'm ending, and I just kind of go with it and I see what happens in the middle. And that wasn't the case for this one.
So do you think there's a sequel of Dreaming?
There is actually,
Wow.
if there's interest in it. Right now I'm about, I would say, maybe just shy of the halfway point of the first draft of the prequel to Dreaming, which I'm writing now. So that would be a prequel to Dreaming. It's called
Okay.
the it's called the Book of Vuhox right now. At least that's the tentative title. And like I said, I want to finish that, and I want to at least get that one out there, because I really think it, hopefully there's some fans of Dreaming. I'm hoping there's at least a few fans of it. And I want to do it because even if there's only, a dozen fans, at least for those dozen fans, I want to kind of give the full rounded story. And I think the prequel kind of really fills in everything and makes the world very cohesive. It makes you understand, how, why the world was like the way it was at the beginning of Dreaming, and why the characters really had no choice but to do kind of the actions that they did. I think it just delves a little deeper into the mythology, and so I really, like I said, would like to do that just for the fans there, do the prequel. Now, if it's successful and moderately successful, and there's a decent amount of fans and interest in it, I could write 3 additional books. That I do have the general ideas for 3 additional books in my head that would be in the Dreaming world. So it could be a 5 books, like, or
Wow.
quintology, if there's enough interest, and if I can, if I feel like I want to tell the stories, but if there's not really a lot of interest in all that, in the public, I can't find a publisher for them or something like that, then obviously it might be harder. But we'll see. Like I said, even if there's a dozen or 20 people out there who are really fans and it really speaks to them, that's enough. I'll self-publish it then for them, and so that's what I'll do. And if they hopefully like continue liking him, then I'll keep, I'll keep doing him until we get to the fifth book. But we'll see. But I did write it purposely as a standalone. So even though like I said, I'm writing the prequel now. Like I said, I could do the three. I did write it so that hopefully that a reader would feel fulfilled and satisfied with just this book, and that everything is there, and they feel like the characters have, reached a destination at least. So let's put it that way. So I try to hedge my bets and do it both ways, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully it resonates with people. I know I enjoy writing it, probably um, probably more, as much if not more than any other work I've done. I always, like I said, enjoy writing my stories and playing in those worlds, but this one, a lot of times I'll just get myself giddy when I'm, when I'm doing it. Sometimes, I'll wake up in the middle of the night with an idea, with a character name in my head for some reason. And I really would, I would probably be perfectly happy if this is my one and only, and I just, the rest of my days was just writing in this world. I could probably do it. Would I like to write in some other worlds? Yes. There's a comic book series that I would love to get off the ground eventually, if I could ever find an artist to collaborate with, because it's just I love the concept of the story, and two, there's this one character in there that he's kind of my alter ego. He's everything that I would do if I just did not care what anyone thought. I did not care about anything. It wasn't civilized. Just did not care. Just was going to say and do whatever. And it's just he's just such a fun character to write, because he says some things that you're just like, oh my god, did you just say that? But I think he's lovable. I think he's still lovable within that. So I would love to just experiment with that character. But other than that one, like I said, I really would be okay. Not that I don't have other story ideas I would love to get off the ground, but I would really be okay with just doing Dreaming. It's an expansive world. There's a lot of places I can go with it and play with it, even outside the 5 books that I've already planned. So I'm hoping it finds a fan base.
Yes, good luck for that. So,
Thank you.
what is the best highlight that you can share about the book Dreaming?
Oh, what's the best highlight I can share about it
Yeah.
without spoiling anything? Okay, let's see. Well, I would say there's, well, I guess without going into a specific scene, I guess I will say that there's some humor in this too. There's some serious stuff too, but there's some humor in it. And the left is, like I said, the main character, and the woman that he finds, again, I'm not gonna really spoil anything here because it's in, like I said, within the first 20 pages. But the woman that he finds, there's an interesting relationship between the two. There's basically there's the left, and for the most of the story, he's with these 2 women, and the 3 of them, and I even posted this on my Twitter account already with a little bit of like mood board image, and the 2 women that he's with and to left, there's an interesting dynamic. It's very interesting amongst the 3 of them, because they're really kind of almost in a 3-way marriage, just kind of almost to say. And like
Yeah.
any marriage, things can get dicey. Everyone kind of puts pressure on the other, and really kind of in a good solid relationship, there should be good times, of course, but you also should be pulling out, the stuff, and calling people out on their, on their stuff, basically, that they need to work on, or that's, they have weaknesses with. And that really goes on amongst the 3 of them, because all 3 of them really kind of push on each other. And, I think the left even says at one point, like, like, must you 2 always, berate me, or can you 2 stop, like
Yeah.
getting on my case and stuff, because there's just, and it gets funny because Deleth is such a menacing character, or he's supposed to be, at least. Again, I don't know if I got that across, but he's supposed to be such a menacing character, and he's basically like he's almost invincible in the fact that, like, he's just so powerful. that he really, it would really take a lot to take him down. Like you would need a gang of people and he has such menace in him, and he has almost like an apathy towards the sanctity of life, and so he's just that. But these two women, they aren't afraid of him, and they're just they basically just talk back to him, and they just will, you know, coerce him to do like what they want to do, or use logic to convince him to do what they want to do. And it's just such a, I think it adds a lot of humor to it there. So I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic that is present. And I think that's really a cool thing to see that done. And I think that's there. And there's also a little snake and serpent that I think is also really cool that shows up in the story that plays a small part, but an important part. And it's got like, I really went to town with this one, that because it's like I just went crazy with it to just try to make it it's as alien as possible. So it has like koosh ball eyes, and it has like a ring of spikes around its head, and it's like all kind of like it's a snake, but it's also like a worm, and it's really cool. And so that's a cool creature I was really proud of for creating. So I would say those would be the two things that I really that I enjoy. If I didn't write the story, those are the two things I would really enjoy from the story.
Very well said, Mr. Matthew. And a shout out to the people listening, top 10 counties that listening in the United States. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. Of course, in
Nice.
Georgia, I have 100% audience share in Atlanta. Thank you so much. Florida and California, Virginia, Texas, New York, North Carolina, Illinois, Iowa, and Louisiana. Thank you so much. Those are my top 10. Please do support this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Matthew Basile.
Thank you, thank you. And just if your listeners want, like I said, it is on Amazon. It was supposed to be on Barnes and Noble. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully, it comes back. But they can look at it for Amazon. Matthew A. Basil, and you spell my last name just like the spice, but with an e on the end. And the book is called Dreaming. So Dreaming. They can look it up there. They can also find me on Twitter. I have it on my pinned post, and you can just find me on Twitter at Matthew A. Basil. And again, Basil spelled like the spice, but with an E on the end.
So, Mr. Matthew, let's talk about your blog. It's all
Yes.
about short stories, right?
Yes, I do have a blog. It started out when I told you, remember, I gave up writing for a little while, and that my friend Coriel kind of helped give me empowerment just in general. And that kind of empowerment led me to, well, at around that time, I also stumbled upon a old notebook where I had started writing a story several years earlier, and I just decided to finish it for fun, and I kind of liked it, and so I decided I don't know what to do with it, so I'll just create a blog and I'll just type it up on the blog. So I just typed up on installments in the blog. I since took it down from the blog because I actually turned it into a comic book called Wolf's Howl, which, like I said, I self-published through Kickstarter. But I started after that. I just started doing different. You know, I did a couple different stories. I wrote some articles about nature, like not articles, I guess short articles, short blurbs about nature, mostly from lessons that, like I said, Molly and Buddy were teaching me at the time, you know, going through nature walks and hikes with them. And because they loved going in the woods, especially Molly. And so they were dragging me into the woods all the time because we had woods where I lived at the time. And you know, I started writing that stuff, and then you know, started joining a writers group, and it was kind of a writers group where you went there and you were given prompts and you had to write something. So I was kind of doing like flash fiction, you know, in the writers group, and then I'd come back and I'd be like, all right, well, I'll put it up on the blog. So the blog's just kind of like a piecemeal of all different kind of writing. I think there's a couple longer stories that I broke up into installments in there. There's some flash fiction. There's some nonfiction articles, and it is up there. Just I just keep it up there in case anyone's interested or finds some kind of inspiration from it. I was thinking of taking it down, but someone gave me a compliment on it, so I guess I'm a sucker for compliments. I guess I'll keep it up for at least a
Yes.
little while longer. But yeah,
So,
I do have that blog up there.
so do you think in the future you can compile it and make it to anthology?
I thought about it. I could potentially, maybe. I don't know. I mean, a lot of times publishers don't want to publish something that's been up on the internet already. So, I would probably have to self-publish it if I did. But I don't know. That's kind of why I leave it up as the blog, because it's kind of like, well, it's just free for people. I don't need to make money off it. I don't need to, monetize it or anything like that. It's just it's just writing that I did. A lot of it was flash fiction. Some of that's like it's those stories from those prompts I did just kind of as a funny little, short thing. Some of them I did were very emotional. They were about emotional states that I was going through at the time, when I got those prompts. So it's a personal kind of conglomeration. There's no themes to it. There's some that I think are better than others. So that's why I kind of just leave it up to the blog. And I was like, if somebody stumbles upon it and it speaks to them on some level or they get some kind of enjoyment out of it, then so be it. But I don't think I'll probably write it as an anthology or anything like that. I think I'll probably just leave it up as a blog, unless I do decide to take down the blog for whatever reason. Maybe because I just don't want it up there anymore. I want to consolidate my writing for whatever reason. But maybe if that ever happens, then I would take them and self-publish it as a little anthology, just so again it's still up there and available. But I would probably make it a very, very discounted anthology because, like I said, I just they're just there for people to enjoy and make of what they will. It wasn't anything I really was putting out there. I mean, it's me. Everything I write is me, but it wasn't anything I was putting out there to try to, make a. It wasn't like I was trying to, I guess, make a story. I was just writing for pure creativity's sake, rather than like with dreaming. I went through. I there was a lot of symbolism in there. I was very meticulous about the planets and and how they worked and what the order of them and everything like that. So they're just these just weren't. They were ones that, like I said, I just dashed off on the spot, and I came home and I typed them up. I mean, I tried to make sure they weren't littered with grammatical and spelling errors, but otherwise, I didn't really go through them and try to expand upon them or anything. So that's why that's kind of just the writing for fun, because I think it's hard for me at least, and I think might be hard for a lot of people, but I think the creativity should always have an element of fun in it. And so I think when you when you kind of just make it just to make money, and don't get me wrong, I would love to make money as a writer.
Of
I would
course.
love I would love for that to be my sole source of income, because that's really the only thing I've done for money that I actually enjoy doing, but or I could tolerate for very long. But but at the same time, you don't want money to like get in over it. So that's why I think it's always good to do some creativity just for the creativity's sake. And I haven't put anything up on the blog in a while because the writing group that I used to do the flash fiction for kind of disbanded. And I was just so heavily focused on um, dreaming, and I was doing the last installment of my podcast series in September, and I was, doing some episodes for my, the anime podcast, and I did a short story that was published in an anthology. And like I said, I have this play I'm shopping around before. So I unfortunately did not follow my own advice. I kind of got bogged down with so much other projects that I was trying to get out to the world that I kind of the writing group disbanded, and I just never got around to doing it myself. I wasn't self-disciplined enough to do that myself. Maybe, like I said, maybe I will, hopefully, once this, right now I'm obviously heavily trying to promote dreaming. So I'm kind of on like the press tour, I guess you could say, right now.
Yes.
but hopefully in another but hopefully in another month or so, I'm hoping things, settle down enough that I can maybe go and look at some prompts, or just do some flash fiction again, and put some stuff up on the blog again to have it out there, so I could, because I do, like I said, believe that there is an importance to doing right creativity just for creativity's sake, and just always making sure you're working out the creative muscle and all that, and making sure that you don't get bogged down with trying to make it a business. That was another thing that was big for dreaming. Not to
Yes.
steer it back there, was it was not done sometimes, not many, but sometimes I've done stories purposely trying to target what I think is popular now, and I know a lot of people say that's not good, and I totally agree with it. And so that was a mistake. And I think dreaming was, like I said, just my thing of saying, all right, you know what, I'm just going to take the elements that I like, that I'm into, that and
Yes.
write a story that I want to see out there that I don't think is currently out there right now. And I'm going to do, what I want. I'm not going to, put stuff in there just to put stuff in there. I'm going to put stuff in there because I feel it's important. I feel that it's, the characters I want to do. So, in a large way, like I said, dreaming was still done for fun, and I guess that's why I'm so excited about it. But I do think sometimes just to do it and not worry about if anybody reads it is also good too.
So, if you give adjectives of your book Dreaming, what are they?
The objectives that I want to see it accomplish.
Yes.
Well, I like I said, if we're gonna go complete wish list here, I would love for it to make I mean, it doesn't have to make me a millionaire, although I'm not going to argue with that. But I mean, if it made enough money where I could, like, it could support me, where I could support myself off my writing, that would certainly be wonderful. It's something that I've been trying to do and dreamed of, I mean, all my life, and many, I'm sure everyone can relate to this, but I mean, there are very few people, if any, really, that I can recall who said, "Yeah, you can make a living off of writing." Pretty much everybody in my life, if not everybody, I would really like, even the people who support me in my writing, kind of always said, "Well, just make sure you still have another means of income, just in case." um, but
Yes.
and
Yes.
like, hopefully one day your writing supports you, and you make a living off your writing. I believe one day your writing will support you, but you're not there yet. That's usually the best that I get, and those are few and far between in my life. The vast majority of people in my life have, from professors, even professors in film school, said that you will not make you will not make a living off of storytelling. And it's not necessarily that they thought I was a bad writer. It was just that they said, hey, the market's saturated. It's very different than it used to be. Even it's not, it's not conducive to making a living. Because you really have to really rise above the crowd, and get an influencer to latch on, to
Yes.
your work. And so, I was always, throughout my life, and it's a 1 in a million shot, all these kind of things that people hear. So it would be nice to say, oh wow, I couldn't even imagine what it would do for my confidence level if I I did make a living off my writing, and prove that what I believed all my life, and everyone told me wasn't going to happen, and hasn't happened yet, like, actually did happen. I don't know what that, I couldn't even imagine what that would do for my confidence level. The other thing, but you know it is what it is. I'm still gonna write. I'll probably write till the day I die, because I can't stop writing. It's like breathing for me. I've, like I said, I've tried to give it up before, and it just doesn't work. But I would, also like it to at least find a fan base. And again, like I said, I am. It would be great if it would be great if it supported me. Hell, it would be great if it made $1 million for me. But if it just found a fan base of even 20 people, 100 people would be great. I mean, that would probably be like, wow, okay, but just a fan base and a community that could build around it would be really nice. Because again, as I think I kind of said or indicated at the beginning of this broadcast, I wanted to put a lot of myself in this book, and I tend to be very, I think, different. At least I haven't run into a lot of people in my life that I share a lot of things with. And that's over the years, I've tended to hide certain aspects of myself or just kept quiet on certain things or just didn't talk about certain things just because I didn't think, the other people just, they weren't interested in that stuff or they wouldn't understand, I felt, or they would think I was weird. Or they just would, disagree maybe. And then we get into an argument. So, this book, I didn't hold back. I put in a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's woven into a story. You could take it as just a sci-fi story, adventure story. There are deeper things that I did put in there. If you go to that level, I'm hoping that some fans do go to that level, and it really resonates with them. And maybe like I said, we could have a fan base and build up a little community, and that would be really nice if it put me in touch with some people who are interested in these things, who do look at the world, maybe in a different way. And because a lot of these characters are outsiders, and that's, so I really did kind of write this book because I always feel like a misfit amongst misfits. And I kind of wrote this book for anyone else who also feels like a misfit amongst misfits. So it would be nice if, like I said, it helped build a community for that. And we could talk about some of these things that maybe aren't really talked about a lot, or are a little bit difficult to bring up in just everyday conversation. And so that would be definitely another goal besides the financial goal. And my other goal, the third goal, I guess, would be, which goes in line with the community, would just be that maybe it resonates with people or makes them think about something a little bit differently. As I said, I think that's the job of an artist. And so the fan base that I was saying in the community would obviously, I would assume, would be people who either had a lot of these ideas that I've had in my head, or maybe didn't know that they had these ideas in their head, and it kind of maybe clicks with them, and oh yeah, okay, this is, yeah, what I. But there was other people that I'm hoping it finds, that hopefully maybe it just, because we live in such a black and white world, it seems like, anymore. And I I don't think that's a good thing just overall. I don't think black and white thinking is a good thing. And part of the reason why I did write this book, not only maybe to make money and to maybe find like-minded individuals, was to maybe also be a voice out there. So to so that people could maybe think about things a little differently, or maybe see that there's a different way to look at something, or maybe that, hey, well, are we really looking at things so differently, or are we maybe just looking at the same thing from a slightly different angle? And if it triggers that thought in some people, or even just a few people maybe, and then they contribute to the conversation in the collective of our society here on earth, then that would be huge. Honestly, that would be probably the biggest thing for me, would just be that it made some kind of difference in just maybe opening the door a crack, so that people can look at things differently, or have a different perspective on something.
So once again, Mr. Matthew, please do invite our listeners or readers to buy your book.
Yeah. So again, the book is available on Amazon. Good thing I double checked before the show, because it is available on Amazon. It's supposed to be available on Barnes and Noble. It was up on the website as of like 2 days ago. It wasn't up when I checked right before we started this broadcast. I don't know what's going on with that, but it is supposed to be up on Barnes and Noble. It is up on Amazon currently. It is also supposed to be in a couple other small publishers, but I haven't heard yet exactly who and if it is up on there. But it should be pretty widely available. So it should at the very least be in Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Like I said, right now you're not going to probably be able to find it in Barnes & Noble unless they fix the glitch while we were doing this recording over the last hour. But it is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon in Kindle form or paperback. It is supposed to also be on Barnes & Noble in ebook format or paperback. You just search Dreaming, just like it's normally spelled, Dreaming. You can also search my name, which is Matthew, Matthew. My middle initial is A, as in Alpha. And then my last name is Basile, which is Basile. It's spelled just like the spice, but with an E on the end. And sometimes I'm going to be honest, I am a debut author. So sometimes you have to type in my name and the title of the book for it to come up on a search because that's the way the algorithms work these days. But or you can also, if you have Twitter or you just want to try looking up my Twitter page, it's my pinned post on my Twitter page, the link to buy it. And my Twitter account is Matthew A. Basile. So it's MATTHEW, capital A, capital BASILE.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Matthew Basile because if we support them, they give their best. And as he's saying, there's a prequel of the book. Probably
Yes.
the prequel will be better than the first. If you
Hopefully,
support them.
that's the goal. That's the goal, to make each one better than the last one. That's what I'm
Yes.
trying here.
Yes.
I will say, if you're into kind of the more otherworldly elements of dreaming, and the deeper philosophical parts of dreaming that I tried to go into and infuse in the book, the prequel definitely will go heavier into that. So if you like the adventure stuff, then buy the prequel and you can just skip reading it, and then hopefully that will spur me on to write the third installment, which is much more adventure and has a lot of craziness. And the third one, like you said, I haven't outlined it, but in my head, it's just like, wow, it's just going to go crazy. There's just going to be so much. It's going to be a manic ride. So hopefully, if dreaming is successful, hopefully at least those two will come out.
Yes, let's support Mr. Basil. And as I always saying, if you support them, they give their best. And people listening here on my Book 101 review, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast called Food 101. It's my third season, people, and my third season is bigger, better, and bolder because I have my co-host Chef Alessandro. He's an Italian executive chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do check Food 101. So Mr. Basil, if you have a movie contract for your dreaming, is it the same title of the book? This line.
Oh, if I have a movie contract?
Yes. Let's be
Well,
futuristic, okay?
well, yeah. If I have a movie contract, I would hope it would be the same title. But I mean, hell, if they want to do a movie contract, they can name it anything they want. I'll take it as long as, I mean, because movies, and it's not me being greedy. I mean, movies always promote books and increase readership. I mean, look what happened with Where the Crawdads Sing that just recently came out. I mean, that book blew up. I mean, it was already successful, obviously, because of Reese Witherspoon's book club, but then the movie came out. That's how I found out about it. I bought the book because I saw the movie trailer and I was like, wow, this is really good. Oh, wait, it's a book. And I haven't even seen the movie yet, but I bought the book and I already read it. So if somebody wants to turn it into a movie, which I would just love, for the fact of, because I came from a movie background and because it's going to obviously bring more readers to my book and make sure that I do the rest of the series, then if they would like to change the title, as long as it's not something that's offensive, I think I would be pretty open to it. But I would hope that they kept dreaming, because it was funny because writers a lot of times, and editors and stuff, they'll tell you to try to avoid ing words in writing.
Yes.
And so I didn't really, a dreaming popped into my head, but I was like, well, it's an ing word. I don't want to name my book an ing word. So I kept, even though dreaming's a big part of it, I mean, that's the big thing in the book. But I was like, so I wanted to attach to that, but I was like, well, maybe I'll do like Dream Warrior or Dreamer or just Dream. And I kept looking up all these titles and they were all already taken. All of them were already a book title. But Dreaming wasn't a book title that was already out there. So I kind of was like, all right, well, I guess we're going with Dreaming. I guess it's meant to be. Maybe that's why it popped in my head, and that was how it's there. So, and I think it kind of fits to it, because Dreaming's also for those of you who are into metaphysical and deep spiritual stuff and a very indigenous, like shamanic spirituality, Dreaming's a concept that's used a lot in indigenous spirituality. And it kind of is, again, harkens similar back to what they're doing in the book in Dreaming. So I actually kind of thought that it was fitting. So I do hope they keep it. But if they wanted to change it and they're willing to do a movie contract and turn it into the next, Avatar, I'm not really gonna be too picky on the title.
So, do you think your novel or book is good for a movie or good for a series?
I think this one works for a movie. I think it works for a movie. I will say a lot of stories that I do, I think could turn into series. I mean, that's a lot of the story ideas I've done recently, especially. I kind of, when I dream them up, I do dream them as like a series, a Netflix series or whatever. But this one I think would work better as a movie, or you could do it as a mini series if you did it as like a longer mini series, because it's the characters. So much changes in each book. It would kind of be, I think, a challenge to try to stretch that out over seasons. I'm sure you could do it. And again, I'm not going to argue if somebody wants to turn us into the next Hulu series or HBO next Game of Thrones. I'm not going to I'm not going to argue with you. But if you were telling me, as someone who was trained in screenwriting originally, if you were telling me, okay, you got to adapt this into a visual medium, meaning either a TV or a movie series, I would tell you, okay, I'm going to do it as a movie because I just think it's easier and it will work better. And you could almost pull a lot directly from the book with these, I think, even though it would be different because there is a difference between, literary and movies and television. But yeah, I would go with a movie overall. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me talk about my dreaming novel.
More to come, people. See you soon.